He said, this will lead to your demise. I found out that I had stage 3 cancer. It had traveled not just from the top of my foot, but it was now in my lymphatic system. Not too long after that, I summited Mount Rainier while going through chemotherapy. I had actually an additional cancer diagnosis. When you're kind of at rock bottom, you become a lot more grateful and at least aware of the small steps that you take to get back to the summit. I was lucky enough to qualify for Ironman World Championships in Kona.
Amanda Kimiko.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
I'm good.
What makes you a spicy bit of meat?
Oh, I'm a 2-time cancer survivor who just competed at Ironman World Championships. So I'd say that's pretty spicy.
Correct.
What's your opinion about pineapple on pizza?
Oh, I mean, whatever floats your boat. I'm a huge fan of pineapple. But I am severely dairy allergic, so I would choose
No pizza.
Yeah, no pizza.
Or dairy-free pizza?
I don't know if I like dairy-free
What is
cheese.
that?
It's gross.
Yeah.
They haven't gotten it yet. If they do, they can call me and I'll try and I'll give them my actual opinion. But
If the pizza was dairy-free, it tasted good, would you allow pineapple to be on
I
it?
would.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was a wrong answer.
Appreciate
Sorry,
that.
yeah.
I like sweet and salty though, so it's. I mean, are you beige spicy meat or?
I'm just saying you started off on the wrong foot. Pineapple
sorry.
on pizza is not there.
You believe it to be a
there.
cardinal sin?
Wholeheartedly, yes.
Got it.
Wholeheartedly.
All right. So I've only just started my endeavor with running, and barely. When you said you woke up today and did 8 miles, I was like, that's wild. Tell me what an Ironman is. Because I remember just marathon, and then I'm like, but there's more.
So the marathon's actually what you end with.
Yeah.
So you start with a 2.4 mile open water swim, and then it goes into a 112 mile bike, and then into a full marathon. Yeah.
So 3 disciplines.
3 sports. Yep.
And we understand that you actually didn't really know how to swim prior to.
No.
Or ride a bike.
Or ride a bike. Yeah.
So you took up Ironman training
Yep.
in 2022?
No, like January of this year.
Of this year?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I honestly, like, I didn't know how to swim. I honestly was very nervous putting my face in the water. So I was in the military, but my whole idea of like what being in the water was like getting out as fast as you can, surviving. So like getting your head above water. So honestly, like my first month was just me getting comfortable, like being underwater. But yeah, 6 months is what got me to not knowing how to swim, not knowing how to ride a bike, like literally not knowing how to ride a bike, falling. So 6 months up until Coeur d'Alene, Ironman Coeur d'Alene, and then I was lucky enough to qualify for Ironman World Championships in Kona in October.
Because most people who would say, like, I learned how to swim or I learned how to bike ride, that would be the feat. But you've decided, I don't want to just swim. I want to swim for 2.5 miles.
Yeah.
And I want to bike ride for over 100.
Yep.
That's like, I don't drive that far.
It's pretty far.
How do you go from essentially not knowing to learning how to do it over such a long endurance?
Endurance.
Yeah, endurance. I make up
actually
words.
like that word.
It's kind of cute.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was just mind over matter. It was dedication. Actually, the whole story of why I started training for Ironman was I had a friend who competed at Ironman Iowa, and he had came back and told me about his experience. At this time, like I had been running, kind of like racing. I was doing OCR, which is like Spartan races, and I was climbing mountains. And I did all this through a pretty tough health journey. And when he told me about his experience, I was like, ugh, Ironman, I could never do that. And like with that amount of passion, I told him that I couldn't do it. And it really like just irked me and like made me really upset that I limited myself that way. And then I festered on that for like 2 weeks, and then I decided to start training. So I think a lot of it was like out of spite for the fact that I like set limits for myself. But yeah, balancing a full-time job in the operating room, and you know, I had a training session of 9 hours. That was my longest training session.
I'm pretty sure we can look it back, but I was quite definitive that I couldn't do an Ironman either at the beginning, remember? So maybe
Well, that's
I don't know if it will irk me too much.
Yeah,
I'll see what happens.
I can conclusively say I can't do one, and I'm okay with that.
That's
Is it? So I'm almost thinking iron. The word iron in the man is essentially what you're made of in order to do this.
I guess, or maybe like something stronger like titanium.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I would just encourage everyone to go at least view an Ironman at some point in their life, because it's honestly one of the most magical experiences. Just being able to see so many walks of life. Like there's 70-year-old ladies who are finishing in 16 hours, and it's just pretty incredible. Like everyone who's dedicated so much time to be able to race and then just show up on one day and do something so crazy. Yeah. It's pretty wild.
How long does it take you to finish an Ironman?
So it depends. My last one, I believe, was like 13 hours and 40 minutes. It was, we can go into a little bit, but definitely was not my goal time. My goal was significantly less than that. But yeah, 13
hours. Was that the first time?
That was first and second time was about the same. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And what is your favorite discipline of the three?
Running, by far, by like a landslide. It was not my favorite at World Championships because I had experienced what is called a bonk. Have you heard of this?
A bonk in
like
is different to
not
us.
Like a boink.
Yeah, boink, bonk.
A little boink.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah. No, you have to explain what a bonk is.
Bonking is what.
I'm sorry. So iron athletes would know what bonking is,
100%.
But everyone else might think what we think.
So most endurance athletes know what a bonk is, and they wouldn't be necessarily too
phased by that.
Yeah, too humored by it. But I actually really appreciate your response to that. So bonking in endurance world is basically when your muscles no longer have fuel, or they don't have carbohydrates that are stored in the muscles any longer, and they just refuse to go. So if you've ever heard someone who's trained for an ultra marathon or something mountain related, it's just when your body, like literally your mind could say like, oh yeah, we're good, we can keep going, but your legs stop working. And I have never experienced that in my entire life, and I experienced that at Kona. And It was because I have celiac, which is like an extreme gluten intolerance. So 2 days leading up to Kona, I threw up all of my food I didn't eat anything up until breakfast, had an acai bowl, threw that up, and then couldn't keep water or food down.
On the day or 2 days
2 days before.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So
no fuel.
Yeah, so your body was
no
just...
fuel.
So
and then you decided to go ahead.
Well, of course.
She went all that way.
Well, I mean, honestly, at Coeur d'Alene, I had 101-degree fever.
Oh my.
So, like, I just have been quite unlucky with my Ironman race days thus far. So maybe it's just setting me up for even more success in the future. Yeah. But yeah, it was just like, I mean, bonking is just not something I would wish upon anyone in an Ironman.
How long does it last?
Oh, the whole race.
So how do you move then?
You just tell yourself like one step at a time. That's literally I the first portion of the bike, like the first quarter, I was like cruising 27 miles an hour average, like was really cruising, felt so good. And then all of a sudden I hit a wall. And the run run is usually what I'm most excited for. Because then I can get off the bike and I feel like safe and comfy in my comfort zone. No, I did not feel like that.
So you're saying your mind is there, but your body's saying 100%. No. And it's complete failure of your legs.
Complete failure. I was like literally saying out loud, like, what the fuck is going on?
They're not working.
Like I literally was saying over and over, like, what the fuck is going on?
And you said it happened quite early on.
It happened like probably maybe halfway point of the bike is when I started noticing it. And then for sure after the turnaround on the bike, I was like, whoa. And then as soon as I started the run, I was like, something's wrong. Like I was like, I can't even... And there's a whole other potential factors. I was actually in the hospital the week before my race too, with some cardiovascular situations and just like a lot of factors. But definitely that I was like, this is the bonk situation was like unbelievable. So.
And you got 13 hours regardless of that.
Yeah.
Wow.
She can get 13 hours while bonked. Imagine me. I wouldn't even be able to finish it in a day unbonked.
Yeah.
I mean, the swim in itself is what I think
the scariest part.
Is that what you would say is your least favorite or the bike?
No, definitely the swim.
Swim.
Yeah, the swim is like surviving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I feel like also like some people that are just gifted swimmers are so far ahead of
100%.
your average swimmer
Yeah.
that it gives them an incredible advantage in the water because like that distance can make it a very tough to kind of catch up. But then obviously,
Totally.
you know, you've got the other disciplines to do. But I know myself how like I'm not a great swimmer,
Yeah.
but I come from Australia where everyone's a great swimmer.
Yeah.
And so if I was to start, you know, and get in the swim, I would lose the race right there.
So the interesting thing about the swim, though, is it's the shortest time-wise. So I actually knocked 15 minutes off of my swim from Coeur d'Alene, which is a lot for swim.
Huge.
Because
What's
you
an
get it-
average swim time?
I'm not sure what average would be. I can't even remember what my own time
But you knocked off 15
was. I think it was an
That's
hour
a lot.
and 15 or some hour and something
So
like
you're
that.
swimming continuously for
really?
an hour? And
Oh yeah, in open water.
Whoa.
And actually, Kona was no wetsuit. So then the wetsuit does allow you to have a little bit of buoyancy.
Yeah.
No, not in Kona.
So you could tread water for longer, probably.
In a wetsuit for sure,
Wow.
because it alleviates some of the extra, I guess, weight. It feels like, I don't know.
That's
Pulls
almost
you up a
my
bit.
excuse.
Yeah.
I
Can't
I
swim because
can't-
you're not in a wetsuit?
because I couldn't swim for that long.
Perfect. That's the perfect excuse.
I've done 2 laps of a pool and felt like I couldn't do any more.
I mean, it's when you first start too, it does feel like that.
Yeah.
But it's honestly like the swim, once I got over the fear, it was just like repetitions. But I think, in my opinion, a lot, what I've seen of the races are won and lost. For sure in the bike, but for sure in the run.
In the run, you
Oh
think
my
is where it
gosh.
happens the most.
I mean, my marathon time, I'm not even going to say it because it's quite embarrassing, but like if you run a 6-minute mile marathon or even let's make it more reasonable, an 8-minute mile marathon, that sets you way ahead of a lot, like the majority of the people who are.
Really?
Because by the time you get to that point,
Yeah.
I mean, you're lucky
that's
if
true,
you're
yeah.
walking good.
Yeah.
Like, let alone actually
Yeah.
able to hold a pace.
Because it's 26 miles.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of the distinguishing factor is how it's such a long period of time that you
So
can.
long.
Are you a finisher or a like where do you feel like you thrive in the race? Obviously the run, but like
Yeah.
what aspect like finishing it or starting it or
For sure, finishing. I mean, I think like maybe this comes from my upbringing too, where it's like it's not over until you've finished and given your 100. So I think that's definitely, and it also that's you finish with the run. So that's kind of where, and I tend to also like for these longer endurance hold myself back a little bit at the very beginning, and you have to in my Ironman specifically because it's so long. But even like longer trail races, I'm like trying to keep the discipline of starting easy. That way I can finish. And even if you're not doing long endurance races, it's actually, if you're even just running 1 mile, if you start like 100%, like a full sprint, right? You're not going to be able to give that for the whole time. So you have to have some sort of discipline to hold that back.
I've only just started to learn about the 1 mile strategy.
yeah.
Like I didn't know about that. And then you can expand it to 26. Have you done sports your whole life?
Yeah, I actually grew up playing boys baseball.
Baseball, yeah.
So I was a pitcher. Like I played from 3 to 18. So I grew up playing sports and in male dominated spaces. So I think a lot of that comes from that too. Is like I always felt like I had to compete with bigger, stronger, etc. And then obviously my time in the military.
Sure, and
Yeah.
Your journey is an incredible one, not just because you just learned how to swim, which I think that most people would find amazing
Yeah.
in that if you just left it there.
Mm-hmm.
But your journey actually started with a diagnosis and kind of coming from that. So could you kind of, for people that don't know your journey, like where you started and your transition into becoming an Ironman?
Yeah. So around 2020 is kind of where my life took a massive turn. I was in the military. I was honestly like really thriving in my community, and I found a spot on my foot, and I pushed it off getting it looked at for quite a long time. And I got shooed away by a military doctor saying, "Oh, it's nothing." So I was like, "Perfect! I got like the answer that I wanted. I'm not going to look into it any longer." But eventually, the spot continued to grow, and it didn't really ever look like a mole per se. But when I had it looked at by an actual dermatologist outside of the military, she really urged me to go get it looked at. By the time it was also like, I had additional pain and some other things that were just a little wild. But when I went back to the military dermatologist, I got a referral because I had a civilian side referral. They had told me like, we need to get this removed immediately. And I don't know if we want to go like super deep into like the aspects of cancer, but I found out that I had stage 3 cancer, and it had traveled not just from the top of my foot is actually where they found it, but it was now in my lymphatic system, which means that now it's like silent. It's just kind of in your body, which is kind of interesting and very scary, obviously. But that whole experience was really eye-opening to me, just because I felt like at that point, like I'd faced adversity, obviously, growing up in a household where I didn't have a mom and so many other things, but nothing like that where it was like I always felt like I could overcome anything that came to me, especially physically. But after my first initial surgery, they removed lymph nodes, they removed the top portion of my foot and skin fat from my ankle. And they told me I would never run again. They said, you'll never run again. You'll never hike again. This is actually what the doctor said specifically. He said, this will lead to your demise, which obviously not great bedside manner from a doctor.
They normally don't have great bedside manner.
Yeah, especially military doctors.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I went through the whole process of recovering from that surgery, and I was in a boot for 6 months, non-weight bearing. So I was on crutches for 6 months, which was just a total whirlwind for me, especially being in the military, being female in the military. I was like, everyone's just going to think I'm weak, like because I'm in this boot. And I was so concerned about that. But yeah, so the recovery surgically was really interesting. And as soon as I got out of the boot, I started walking, and I couldn't put a shoe on. So I started walking on the treadmill, like just honestly trying to be like, tell myself every step, like this, you're going to get better. Like this is going to get better. And like, you're going to overcome whatever they told you isn't going to be true. Like we'll figure out a way. And yeah, so not too long after that, I summited Mount Rainier while going through chemotherapy. I had actually an additional cancer diagnosis. So I had eye surgery and then eye chemo and just like a whirlwind of things.
What year was your second cancer diagnosis?
2021. The month after I stopped my first treatment for chemo, or my first chemo for my cancer. So immediately I found out I have a secondary cancer. Yeah, which was a whole other thing.
You then tackled this second remission of cancer.
Yeah.
So how do you get to Ironman starting to train the start of this year?
Yeah.
Within a year from where that is? Like, how did you even get yourself into the mindset and even just the recovery process? Like you said, you weren't even weight bearing.
No. Yeah. I mean, honestly, a lot of it came down to mountains. So I live in Utah now, and I feel very tied to the mountains because while going through COVID, we were super shut down in Washington State. I was hiking, and one of the things that they told me I couldn't do ever again was hiking. And I was like, I'm going to prove you wrong by at least doing this. So honestly, it was a great recovery tool for me as well, because if you're on uneven ground, your feet, your ankles, your knees, everything like learns how to do walking and running or whatever on unpredictable ground, which is actually really great for ligament damage, etc. So I just did that. And when I started climbing peaks, so I have been a big mountaineer through my journey as well, which a mountaineer is someone who like explores, climbs maybe mountains that don't have trails like to the summit. But I was chasing that for a while as well. Summited 30 of Washington's most highest and technical peaks while going through everything. And I think just my mentality of like overcoming, if I could overcome a peak, or if I could overcome a race, or if I could overcome just training today, even though I feel awful while going through chemo, that is enough for me to know that I can beat cancer. And it was just teaching myself that like, you can do this, so that means that you can do that. It was correlation. So when I had told my friend about that I couldn't do the Ironman, I'd already done all these other things. So that's why I think it really irked me. It was like, what am I talking about? Like, I've already done all this other stuff. Like, why would I think that I couldn't do that? So that's what happened when I got started. At that point, like I said, I never swam or biked. I had done one marathon before, but all my other races were like trail races, OCR, Spartan races, and then mountain training.
And within 6 months, you went from not being able to swim to swimming for Ironman and then qualifying for the World Championships. Were you interested in doing that, or was it just to show yourself that you could do it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, no, I was not interested in it, which sounds silly. But it was the aspect, and I've become interested in it.
Yeah,
I love it now. It's such a unique sport, being able to combine multiple sports. But at the time, no. Like, I honestly was terrified of the water. I didn't like the idea of going on a bike on tiny wheels. Like, I remember like picking out the bike
thinnest
for the first
ones.
time.
Yeah,
I was like, what are these wheels? That's not even, like, a pebble could make you fly off of it. And it was getting comfortable with like being like, no, you're going to be okay. But yeah, no interest in it. I thought Ironman athletes were amazing. Never would I think that I would be in that. So pretty wild.
I think that, like, I've learned, especially like through sports and my journey, that there are like different kinds of motivational factors for people. Some people thrive off that positive reinforcement, and some people thrive off being told you can't do that, or get up, work harder, that kind of mentality. It sounds like, with how your verbiage has been, more like to prove the naysayers. And so to you, like, what has been like the biggest motivating factor to getting to where you are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, truthfully, I used to only be motivated by negative aspects. Playing boys baseball is always like, I'm 5'2", like, I'm a little girl, and all these boys think that I'm weak and I can't play the same sport as them. So it was always like proving to them that I could do things. And I thrived off of being told that I couldn't keep up. Military, same way. I was thriving when people questioned my abilities. I maxed the male scale for PT tests, so I never held myself to the standards of females, only held myself to the standards of males. That way, no one could ever question my ability to be in wherever I was. So any unit that I was attached to, or being more in like the niche communities, I never allowed other people to question me, because I really did thrive off of that type of motivation. After my cancer, it shifted completely the opposite. I still definitely tend to think about or to motivate myself in a negative way, but it's way more about like being able to show other people that they're able to actually overcome hard things. And I mean, cancer has completely changed my life. I will never be sorry for myself for the experience. I only feel like it's a blessing, because it's allowed me to have such a greater impact on people who suffer with cancer or chronic illness, or people who don't even suffer from an illness, just like need a reason to keep going. So that's what's motivated me, and that motivated me through Ironman completely, was just like being able to show other people that what they're capable of, that they don't even know. Because we're all so much more capable than we give ourselves credit for.
What you share online is so impactful. And it's even, I think about it and I'm just like, well, not even I think about it and I'm like, I can do more than I think I can. But sometimes I think when you couldn't walk for 3 months, like 6 months, your life has stopped initially. And I feel like you've done so many things that people could only dream of. How was it to go from doing all of these things to being like, wait, we need to just stop for a second, or if not even a second, 6 months or even more. Yeah. How did you cope with that?
Oh my gosh, I had such a hard time.
Yeah.
I was always go. Like even in college, I worked 3 jobs. I was always like, love to overload my plate. That's why the military was so great for me, because they love people who give up their entire lives to do this one thing. And me, not being able to run, not being able to train, not being able to like really commit myself the way that I normally was a huge huge wake-up call. And cancer in general has showed me so much about what life truly is about. And it allowed me to really see life in an intentional way and to take a step back, to pause, to have solitude, to have silence and stillness, and be able to just be like, what is life? Like, what is life? And chemo definitely, because I went through chemo during COVID shutdown. So it was so much solitude. It was so much silence. It was a lot of lack of community and encouragement while going through one of the toughest things I've ever faced. And it allowed me space to really just come to grips with what life truly is about, and what is important in this life, what is not important, what I feel like maybe isn't necessarily meant for me, people that are not meant for me, that I'm like continuing to just allow access to me. And yeah, it completely transformed my life in a very positive way. So I would never feel sorry for myself for that. But yeah,
I remember I heard you one time saying that you dissociated a lot through your diagnosis and through your treatment experience.
Yeah.
And almost pretended like you weren't going through cancer. And the social aspects of doing all of these things and completing all of these challenges, meeting all of these people, and then suddenly COVID hitting and you couldn't do that. For me, like my initial reaction would probably be like fall into this pit of like, what am I doing? Despair and stuff. And you say you don't want to feel sorry for yourself, but were there times where you just couldn't, like on a day-to-day aspect, how did you get yourself through the hours of quiet where you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of it was the mountains.
Yeah.
It was like hiking and being with my dog, and I believe in God. So it was allowing just like that connection to also be there and seeking out like, I feel like sometimes we distract ourselves so much, right? Like it's easier to have a day full of distractions and to be scrolling through your phone or watching TV or like even just like listening to podcasts. Like it can be so great and beautiful for us to be able to do all of these things. But if we're using these as tools to escape what life really truly is about, that's where we get lost. Cancer, my recovery, everything allowed me to just step into the discomfort of being alone and into the discomfort of being in silence and just coming to grips with that and knowing that that's kind of, I honestly feel like that's what I needed.
I resonate a lot with kind of how you said like a big event in your life kind of changed the scope of your life and your outlook, that perspective. And you know, it seems like in human nature that a lot of tends to happen that way, where someone might go through something in order to see things differently or appreciate and be grateful for things. And it, you know, predominantly through health, because like if you can have everything in the world, but if you don't have your health, then you don't have anything. How do you speak to someone who maybe hasn't gone through something like yourself, and that motivation, that outlook, the kind of gratefulness that you have in reality for someone who's not there yet, who, you know, we don't want anyone to have to go through these things. And maybe they never will. But like, how do you kind of motivate someone who doesn't quite understand what it's like to have it taken from you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, truthfully, I believe it doesn't matter what you've gone through in life. There's always space for gratitude. You can always find something to be grateful for, whether it's like the color of the podcast that makes you feel joy today. Like when you're actively looking for things to be grateful for, they naturally come to you. But if we're actively looking for things that make us upset or make us mad or make us sad, we're only going to see things in life that make us sad and mad and upset. And I would hope that the majority of people do not have to ever experience cancer, especially cancer at a young age. But I do think it just doesn't matter even. I mean, the hardest thing that everyone's done is the hardest thing that they've done or gone through. Yeah. So even if the hard thing that you've gone through doesn't feel like it stacks up to cancer, that's amazing. Yeah. But that's still the hardest thing. It doesn't make your journey, your struggle any less than mine because I was faced with something like cancer.
Yeah. And that's spot on, right? It's
Yeah.
like you're exactly right. The hardest thing you have done is the hardest thing you've gone through.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to resonate with another in order to understand.
Yeah.
Yes. No, it's so subjective, right?
Even if it's not physical, even if it's like your parents divorcing, like to some of us that's like whatever, but like to someone that's like a detrimental course direction for their life.
What do you think your life would be like if you didn't go through this? Do you think that you would have the same focus you have now, the same appreciation if you didn't go through the ordeals that you have for the last few years?
I mean, there's two different ways that I think about this. I think yes, because I think everything happens in the path that it's supposed to at the end of the day. And if it wasn't cancer, I think it would have been something else. Like I said, it didn't have to be physical, but I think I would have gotten to this place eventually somehow.
Yeah.
But I think no, because I was in the military. I was planning to be in the military for 20 years. That was my goal. And I was so hyper focused on that, and so hyper focused on giving so much to other people that I don't think that I would have had this time to be introspective, to like learn about who I am, what makes me happy, what makes me sad or upset, or that I even have sadness or upsetness. Like I honestly grew up thinking that I couldn't be sad or upset or mad. I just like tanked all of my emotions, like kept all of them in. I didn't even know that when I was mad at something, it was because I was hurt. So I mean, like, so no, in that way of like, it took me a lot of healing and a lot of like going to therapy, and cancer is actually what pushed me to go to therapy. I should have gone to therapy years ago to at least learn. But yeah, so
it almost feels like this, you were meant to do this. You were meant to share your story. You were meant to speak like how you speak, and also like what you went through. You know, some people might have thrown in the towel, but you're not that kind of person. And it's like motivates other people that like, we can do this. Like we got a lot more in us. So I believe you when you say like, everything does happen for a reason. And this is kind of just put yourself like, you've almost, maybe you've just done it quicker than what you would have done it before. Yeah. It's like super, super inspiring for anyone who, regardless of what their achievement or mountain is, it's like, we're all humans. We all go through things, and it's kind of how you tackle those things that can kind of get you over. And so it's one thing that I noticed like in my journey, after what happened to me, I had a spinal cord injury. And one thing that I realized during my recovery is I didn't sit there and be okay with where I was at, every win I got. So along this recovery, I've been like, the day I found out I could walk, awesome, happy for a day. The next day is, well, when can I run? The next day is, when can I do this? When can I do that? And it's almost been this ever-searching journey of fulfillment of when's it going to be enough? When am I going to be happy to be like, you're good where you're at? You're not as strong as you were before, but that's okay. Look at where you were 6 months ago. Those kinds of things. You're doing things that, I mean, most say you shouldn't be doing. There's no way. And you're doing them. And then what you said before, which was like hit me hard, was like 13 hours wasn't good enough. Like, finishing Ironman, all of this. Yeah, you're like, all of this is like crazy, but the way you're speaking about it is like, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
How do you kind of speak from this journey of like understanding like, look where you were, look where you are now, and being okay with, and then how do you continue to kind of go for that?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely resonate too with like those small wins of like overcoming. I think when you're kind of at rock bottom, you become a lot more grateful and at least aware of the small steps that you take to get back to the summit of where, not even the summit, to the first step of where you were. Yeah. And that in itself can show a lot of people what they're capable of. But I mean, for me, I grew up Japanese, and I've always had extremely high standards for my performance. And I guess not to get too super deep, but I grew up without a mom. She left when I was 1. So I learned I guess I came to the conclusion at a really young age that if I performed well enough, that she would realized that I was like worthy of her love. And of course, it's silly to think that I thought that I was the problem. And I've only learned that now as an adult that it was never about me. I was 1 year old. But when I was younger, I thought that if I performed higher, that for one, my dad would say that he was proud of me or that he loved me or whatever. But then also that she might have a change of heart and realize that I was worthy of that. So it started kind of from this like almost like survival technique of like, if I'm just extra excellent, then I can, show people what I'm capable of. But then also I was always really scared of being punished. Punishment was harsh in my household. And if I didn't perform to like the highest level of excellence in sports in school, I was punished for it. And so I think like that aspect has definitely ingrained itself into me. Now, how I sit with it as an adult is still having that core foundation of like knowing that I have high excellence standards for myself as well, but then also knowing that when I do put in the training for something or the tools of what I'm capable with those tools. And for both Ironman specifically, because I was sick for both of them, I know that I was capable of more. I think if I went into something completely like, even like Coeur d'Alene, for example, like because I was so sick, it was my first one ever. I wasn't upset about my time. I was like, okay, like I know this is my first one ever, so I don't have any expectations for myself. But after the continued training, 4 more months of training and me having another Ironman under my belt, by the time World Championships came, I had higher standards for myself. I used to set very unrealistic expectations for myself, for sure. But now I'm kind of like in the boat of like still having those, but knowing that I'm capable of doing more if I don't give 100%.
Have you been through a period of burnout almost, of where you don't want to do more?
Yeah, I mean, right now, honestly, like right now I'm in off season. And honestly, like even 2 months leading up to World Championships, I was experiencing burnout for sure. I was still motivated by the idea of going there, but my body was telling me that I was burning out. Like I was getting sick like every other week, with like flus and crazy stuff. And beyond that, like I felt like I didn't necessarily have the mental fortitude to continue. It was never about the physical. I feel like my body seems to be able to do whatever, but it was the mental aspect.
Is it difficult for you to accept that stage, like period where how do you cope with that stage?
I'm still figuring that out.
Yeah,
for sure.
Me too.
Yeah. Like even right now, like because I do have races on the horizon, but nothing with impending, I guess like a countdown to it. But I know, in the acceptance of it, like I know that there's a reason why I need to step back and like you can be in burnout, but then make the decision to allow yourself space to be able to come back to it.
No, but that's necessary.
It is necessary. We need to recharge.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can't just be expected to always be plugged in, like, or else we'll bonk.
Sometimes charging makes you bonk.
How?
Because it depends on how you view it.
Charging makes you bonk. Is that a joke?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's ambiguous. The like one thing like it's important is like how you get here, but like how important are the people in your life to get you to where you are and to be constantly motivated every day to do what you're doing and continue to push. Going through my journey, like I wouldn't be here without her.
Yeah.
And I that's really kind of been super impactful, like how much she's done for me. Like how important is it to you, the people around you? Yeah,
I mean, so vital in your success to have people around you who are supportive and loving and kind and compassionate and who also have a different perspective than you. My husband, like literally is a saint. Like he was there for every chemo session that I went through. Like he was there for every surgery, recovery, everything. He also watched like all the mental struggles of like not being able to do the things that I'm normally able to do. And I mean, seriously, like he is my absolute rock. And I wouldn't, I wouldn't say that I have the greatest family support system, but he truthfully is my family. Like he is, and friends, we have amazing friends as well. Our core, I'm definitely not someone who runs in a large circle, but I'm definitely someone who runs in a tight circle, because for me, it's really important that outside of blood, that people are very supportive and kind and loving. And that's what family means to me. It doesn't necessarily mean that just because we share the same last name that we're bound to each other. Because if you don't show me the signs of family, then I don't consider you family. And that might sound harsh, but that's kind of the way it is. But I mean, Tyler just, he actually doesn't compete in endurance sports. So he's not in the world. He doesn't run. He doesn't do Ironmans, nothing. But he's fully supportive and understands why I do it. And I think that's like, you don't need to share the same hobbies as your partner. As long as they just are supportive of what you do and understand why you do it, that's kind of where the magic happens.
Are you training yourself for these Ironmans, or do you have a trainer?
So I actually work with NVDM Coaching. Natasha's the owner of the company. Andrea is my coach. So they do triathlon coaching. Prior to that, I did all my own programming, but they do amazing Ironman coaching. So they give you a plan. So I was virtual. So 99.9% of my training was done by myself in isolation. But if you're in Austin,
if you want to,
it's seriously like, it's like I came down for a session before Kona for a run, and I was like, I should have been doing this the whole time. Like, it's so much easier to actually do the work that you need to do with vibrancy when you're burnt out with people.
I think I wouldn't even know what a training plan would look like.
Yeah.
Let alone make it up myself. So when you first decided, the whole learning how to do the actual sport, what does a training day look like?
So generally it's 2 training sessions a day, 7 days a week. And
7.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And they're very...
Even God rested for a day.
Seriously. Well, our rest would be 1 weight training session and 1 swim.
Right, that's a rest day.
That's a rest day.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's what I would have thought.
Yeah.
Just a swim and a gym session, that's the rest day.
And it's different for every person and every experience. That was mine. And I think that's also what led to burnout, because it was like and I'm actually definitely someone who thrives on structure. If I know I need to train every day, my brain's like, perfect. Yes, I need to train every day. But where it got to be really challenging was the multiple sports, the planning around being, working a full-time job and so many other things that I was like, and the training sessions continue to only get longer. So like 2 training sessions a day, but they're not an hour long. They're 2 hours long or 3 hours long or up to 9 hours long.
And this whole process lasts for...
Until your Ironman, for me, unfortunately, stacked. It was June 25th was Ironman Coeur d'Alene. And then I had this oddly long time before World Championships. In my perfect world, you qualify and then you race. Or you qualify early in the year and then you race at the end of the year. It was like this odd period of time where it was like I had to sustain fitness and sustain my like Ironman shape for 4 months and try and improve, when I'd already felt like I'd given so much for the 6 months leading up.
How much recovery do you like from an Ironman does your body need before you can get out there and start training again? Like,
yeah, I mean, my coach, so Natasha says, if you feel like you can run and be like back to training the week that you are done with your Ironman, you didn't push hard enough. I wanted to run, like, I think it was like a week after Ironman Coeur d'Alene. After Kona, I was like, I don't want to do anything. Yeah. But we also moved the day after I got back from Kona, packed our whole house, drove across the country. So I definitely didn't give myself great adequate rest after that. But yeah, it depends on the person. There's some people who get right back to it. But for me, it's definitely like I wanted to give myself at least 6 weeks of off season before starting. So we're getting right to like the 5-week mark right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like it's different for every sport and how your body recovers, but like that's such a long experience and you're leading up to it. Surely your body and your mind needs a little bit of a hold on for a second. Give me a week at least. But for you to say you're ready to back a week, I'd need a year.
But it might also be quite difficult, the recovery part of it, because you're so structured for such a long period of time, and you even said that it helps you to suddenly get out of the Ironman and try and figure out what to do with the hours of the day.
Yeah.
And put your own structure together. That's quite difficult,
Yeah.
I'd say.
Good question. Did you ever do an Ironman in training before you did the official Ironman?
Yeah.
So not the full distances together, and never run. I think my max mileage was 18 or 19 mile training run, but it was usually stacked with the previous day doing a super long ride. So my ride I had ridden indoor on Zwift. I didn't get up to this mileage outdoors because where I lived, it wasn't very bike friendly. But I had worked up over the mileage for the bike. I had worked up the 2.4 miles of swimming, and I had hit maybe 18, 19 miles of running, but never together. Shorter like brick sessions is what they're called, where you practice like the transitions and stuff like that. But yeah, no, you don't really, even for like marathon training, most people who are training for a marathon don't ever run 26.2 miles before their
Until
race.
they do it.
You want to peak. You want to like perfectly time
Yeah.
you to like
Yeah.
be like trained enough to not have your performance be hindered, but then not train too much to where you're like not being able to recover before race day.
But yeah, then it's completely raw. Like, you know, those
Mhm.
marathon runners would have done marathons before. There was
Yeah.
a point in which they hadn't, but like, what is the experience of actually completing an Ironman where you literally have never even strung it all together?
Oh my gosh. I mean, like I was like, I actually showed up and I was like, what do I do? Like, I don't even,
Where am I?
literally like, where am I? Wait, I need to put my bike where? Wait, I need to run there to the, oh, that's how, like so many things I was like, oh, okay. But you know what's cool about that is like, I don't think that a lot of us as adults try new things. Like, I think there's a lot of people who just like live their entire adult lives without ever trying something new. And there's something like kind of childlike about showing up somewhere and not knowing what you're doing and just being able to be like, okay, I'm going to ask this person.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, there's a lot of beauty in that. And sometimes being naive in sport is good because you don't have standards or expectations, or like you're not able to get anxious yet. Like I haven't been anxious for an Ironman.
Yeah.
Like on race day, I haven't been anxious. All my other sports, like I'm like a mess, like about to throw up before the race because I'm just like so stressed out by my performance.
That's completely the motivation for our podcast, like you said,
Yeah.
is like kind of is finding like learning new things about people, because we said like as we noticed when we moved here, we're away from family and friends, and you connect with someone when you start to speak about things that they're knowledgeable about or that they do, that they're interested in, regardless of how, you know, maybe quiet they might seem. If you're speaking about something that they're passionate about, it kind of bridges that gap immediately, and you start to learn things. And I've had the best moments of my life have been in instances where I'm completely out of my kind of like, I don't know, I'm not prepared. Or even as trivial as this might sound, like movies, not watching the trailer, just going into it without any preconception, which sounds odd, but it's almost like I haven't, like a lot of things are limiting barriers for your own beliefs.
Yeah.
And so you don't try things, you don't do things because of your own thoughts. Whereas sometimes the best way to do it is like a kid would, don't think about it, just do it and think about it later.
Yeah.
And you actually you're taking a step in the direction you probably wouldn't have if you talked yourself out of it prior to. So that's quite motivating in the sense that you said you kind of went in and were like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But then you finished it, and now you're like, you know, now look at where you are.
I think a lot of us also like we're really uncomfortable in the unknown. So instead of just like exploring what that looks like, we already make the decision to quit before we've even started, because that's easier, because at least that's known. Like that's something you can control. You don't have to go through the discomfort of not knowing and trying to figure it out and failing and trying to figure it out again. It's kind of interesting that we kind of default to that, like, I'm just going to choose to quit or choose not to discover what might be possible because it's just easier.
In case, yeah.
Yeah. Because I'd rather do that than fail or be like uncomfortable. So I love that you guys are doing a segment where you're learning new things. Like that's got to just be so cool, and so many different disciplines I'm sure you're going to explore on this podcast.
Yeah, jack of all trades.
Yeah. Even coming into this podcast not knowing what an Ironman was really.
Yeah.
And now just having your perspective in many different facets. I've just been opened up. I'm like, I kind of
we're not doing enough.
I'm not that I'm not doing enough, but just excited, and I'm feeling grateful to be here. What was your diet during training? Do you still practice a vegan diet?
No. So I actually just started incorporating meat back into my diet. I was vegan for like almost 4 years, I want to say, but vegetarian for very long, most of my life. And then red meat I hadn't had since I was like 10. Because honestly, like, I think I found out as a kid that it came from cows, and I was really not okay with that. And honestly, it didn't quite sit well with my stomach when I ate it, but I was also eating things like Taco Bell. And I was like, it's not really sitting right with my stomach. It's like allergic to dairy. Like, my celiac didn't come about until I was 17. But like knowing now, I'm like, oh my gosh, it could have been so many more things. But I started eating elk. That's actually how I started introducing it into my diet. Elk is really high protein, very nutrient dense. And in my brain, being able to eat bow hunted elk is like, someone had to work really hard to get that. And it's not factory farmed. Like it removes a lot of the guilt, I feel like, that I've felt. But I'm really interested to see next year, like the difference of my performance with meat versus previous to meat. Everyone has their own opinions about what they eat. But yeah, I was vegetarian, pescatarian. I started incorporating fish after Coeur d'Alene because I started craving salmon again. And when I crave something, I feel like I've learned that it's usually because my body's trying to tell me that I need something. Yeah. So I incorporated salmon. But other than that, it was like basically I was eating as much as I could within reason. Yeah. And trying to have whole foods, etc. But very carb heavy. I've always been a carb queen. Like I love rice. I could eat more rice than maybe that's what I'll challenge you to is a rice eating contest.
I love rice.
I think that I could take that on.
Yeah, we have rice of everything.
I mean, it's like absurd. Yeah. I mean, I eat miso soup and rice for breakfast. Like that's like my I love miso soup. It's my favorite. But yeah, I mean, like so much rice, so much fruit. I tried to keep everything like consistent. So one of the number one things with endurance is if you show up on race day like having ate something that you hadn't ever eaten before, or race week, which I really screwed up with the celiac with having that acai bowl. I should not have done that. But yeah, all in all, it's just lots of carbs, very carb heavy diet. And I've had my past struggles with food. So when I think of like trying to restrict anything, which is funny because I have celiac, so naturally I have to do that. But when it comes to like endurance sports, the freedom of being able to do that naturally comes with the sport as well. But I do see a lot of people who do struggle with that relationship even in sport, especially with stuff that requires running. Because there's this odd idea, and I'm definitely very muscular for an endurance athlete. Like I've always been very muscular. I still lift. So I've had comments from people like, you're too big to be an endurance athlete, or you're too big to be a runner. And that, I mean, obviously, like no person wants to hear that. And I just don't think it's true. Yeah. But in addition to that, like, I don't think that you have to look a certain way to be an athlete, let alone look a certain way to be an endurance athlete or be an Ironman athlete. If you go to an Ironman event, holy cow, are there people who have different shapes, sizes, walks of life? Like, it's pretty incredible.
There isn't a body type for any sports. Like, yeah, basketball players might be taller, but it doesn't mean that's the formula, because there are shorter basketball players who flourish. And it's with any sport. So yeah, like anyone who makes those comments, first of all, they don't do it themselves. Yeah. They're a keyboard warrior. Let's think about the reality of that. Yeah. So we you know, that you take with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But I completely agree. Like, you know, rugby should be big, should be a lot bigger than I am. But there's a lot of smaller players who are some of the best players in the world. It's really how you frame this, and you know, where does your power lie? You know, maybe you lack a certain area, but it means you can put more into this area. And you know, and people are constantly thinking about like, how do I make my weaknesses stronger? But don't neglect your strengths that are strong.
Yeah.
Also focus on the strengths. So it is
what's your unfair advantage?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm not asking. I'm just saying hypothetically.
incredibly charismatic.
You're incredibly charismatic.
So like with the opponents that I'm playing, I get on their good side.
You tickle them and then they run away.
Exactly. So then they're like, I don't want to hit him hard because he might hurt him.
Oh my gosh.
That's basically my angle, is befriend them and then sneakily deceive them.
Oh, and then just hold their hand on the sideline.
Exactly.
Got it.
Be like, oh, yeah.
You should see one of his games. They're quite a spectacle.
Oh, I'm sure. Slapping each other's booty cheeks.
Yeah. Well, I was just asking, I've also had my own issues and a strange relationship with food for many years. And just coming out of that and knowing that not even food is fuel, but the amount of food that you do need to eat in order to perform at some of these elite levels. Not even at an elite level, in just the way that I want to move my body and appreciate that. It's more than, like, if I'm restricting myself, I'm restricting my entire life. It's not just the food. And that's why I'm just interested, because it is a discipline to also have to be able to nourish yourself correctly for something like this.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's different coaches have different coaching styles. And one of the things that I love so much about working with Natasha and NVDM was that they never asked me to weigh myself. They never asked me like what I was eating. I think they just trusted the fact that like I knew my body. And there's a lot of coaches and athletes that do consider weight as a key proponent to their performance.
Right.
Do I agree necessarily that that's always correlated? No. Do I think it has a small smidge of performance? Absolutely. Especially like biking, there's something called kg to wattage. That relationship between like being able to push with your muscles on the bike, get a certain wattage related to your weight.
Right.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, like you said, like our bodies need fuel. Everyone needs fuel, and whether you're an athlete or you just need brain fuel, like you can tell when you're not well fueled, and yeah, I think like it depends on how you were raised, but like there was definitely a stint of time where that was not my mentality, and it's affected who I am today for sure. But it almost feels like a past life.
Same.
Yeah.
It's definitely, it was a small world for sure.
When was your struggle?
12 till 22. Or 10 until 22. I mean, we don't have to talk about me at all.
No, I want to know that. I would like to know.
Yeah. It does. It feels like I was a completely different person.
Yeah.
And a completely different, I didn't feel like myself at all. And I didn't know that I didn't feel like myself until I decided that I wasn't shackled. Like you think that you are and you think that you're going to be stuck there. And that's just the way that it is. But once you've decided, nah, that's not it. I went like this. No, that's not it. And do things that you think weren't like allowed almost.
So was your food issues based on like control, or do you felt like it was like
it must have been control. Yeah. I was just afraid of like eating a lot of food, just like restricting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can be a byproduct of a lot of
sports.
Yeah,
for sure.
Like crazy, like you see it in bodybuilding and endurance athletes. Because it is true, like you said, like there's a certain physique that might be more optimized for some of these, and especially where you said like stronger legs, more weight would equivalent to a higher wattage on a bike, more power. But then that's what can be quite a detrimental
get
to
fixated on that.
They get so fixated on these rules and these kind of associations that it's like, well, if I'm not like that, then that can't happen. But it's not true at all. And I think there's freedom in the fact that you can know you're okay to eat the way that works for you. I can eat the way that works for me, and we might have a different result. Or it might even have the same result, based on what we're eating. It's
everyone gets to where they're meant to be in their way. it's like a testament to you. Like there was so many signs that told you no, you can't.
Yeah.
The old age doctor that told you that it was going to be your demise. I mean, that is crazy, but you don't have to go the path that you think is set for you.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I think we need to go into the challenge.
So I'm already kind of, I'm nervous because I'm thinking like as we've spoken to you and learned more about you and your journey, it started to get me scared to think that we're going to try and do something in this field. As complete amateurs, we'd like to know how you could challenge us to something that, we don't want to do an Ironman. But maybe a session.
1 hour tops. 30 minutes.
The shorter, the better. We could watch
12.5.
We could watch a highlights reel or something.
Yeah.
No, but something that would be equivalent to, in a much shorter frame. So yes, we're not saying put us on an Ironman.
Yeah.
But maybe even a session that you might be able, a versatile session that you think that people that are not trained in this field, but they're trained up here.
Yeah.
That's all we have right now.
Okay.
And I'm not even trained up there, really.
Yeah, we're actually
come
quite
on, 5
lacking.
pull-ups, like, come on.
I'm really proud of that.
That's really seriously, like wholeheartedly, that's very impressive.
Yeah,
especially in a few months.
You learn how to swim. I learned how to do 5 pull-ups.
Yeah,
got
It's
this.
pretty incredible.
Yeah, we can do everything.
Seriously, very incredible. There's a lot of males who could never do that.
Yeah.
Who think they could never do that, but who cannot do that right now.
Thinking and doing different things, right?
Oh my gosh. Males are almost the opposite, I found, where they're like, oh, I could do that. And then they try and they're like, massively fail.
Yeah.
I feel like in general, women tend to be the opposite, where we immediately go to like, I couldn't do that. And then it's the proving
that you can.
That's actually really,
that's
really true. That's really true. I kind of see that. Like they would be like, I could do that, but then half the time or most of the time it's not true, and it's quite the counter for females who are like, I couldn't do that, but then they can do it.
Oh yeah. And you ran with Matt Choi.
I did.
What was your estimated mile time that you thought you were gonna get?
8 minutes.
Yeah. Well,
and what did you end up getting?
709.
I got 709. Yes.
Okay, so you severely underestimated yourself.
Yeah. So I think I might win this challenge.
But you constantly do that to yourself. You always are putting yourself down, and like it's not good enough. And and it it's for some instances it sounds like yourself, like you're almost like you have such high expectations that if you're not meeting that, it's a motivation to get to them. But it's also like all of us looking on are going, you're incredible.
Yeah.
Like you're doing amazing. You don't realize it.
Yeah.
So you know what? Like it's okay to actually sit back and go, I'm doing good. And you do. And I think that's what's inspiring about you as well, is like you have a great kind of outlook on life. And you're going to make our outlook a whole lot different.
Yeah.
Once we get in the water.
Yeah. I'm about to say like in life, yes, but tomorrow probably our outlook is going to be pretty bad.
I think it's going to be pretty good. So I think I want to incorporate a couple other things. So I definitely at my core am an athlete of multiple things. Someone actually told me once that a triathlete is like deciding that you'd rather not be mediocre at one sport, that you would be mediocre at multiple sports. And I just love that because I feel like I'm the queen of being like taking on a bunch of different trades, but never being like super duper excellent at one. But I'd love to be able to do, a swim challenge of some sort. Straight out of the swim into a different sport, you kind of will get that experience of coming out of the water and then into something else immediately.
Yeah.
But then I would like to end with like a run of some sort. It doesn't have to be a long one. But like, getting that experience of like from one thing to the next, I think is like one of the coolest things that Ironman offers.
I think, that's what I was fascinated by is that you turn from a fish into a crocodile
crocodile.
Sorry. I was thinking of a land animal and I went crocodile.
The crocodile's bike?
Because they could do both.
So fish to crocodile to cheetah.
Yeah, whatever it is. We might very well regret this decision, but we're inspired to take it on regardless, and it'll be a great conversation and memory either way. And we're going to take this on tomorrow. But
It's also a competition.
It's also a competition, exactly.
Between you two, right?
Yes. So we'd like you to kind
I'm
of...
against you.
Okay.
Who do you think's going to succeed more? Now, it will be a win just to complete it, but who are you backing?
I mean, I'm going to say 5 pull-ups, Bex. I'm going to say Bex swim.
Yeah.
I'm going to say maybe like you might come out to play on the run aspect of like coming from a strength to a run because you have rugby experience. Because rugby is very like strength plus running.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. I think it'll be pretty evenly matched, if I'm going to be honest.
We'll think of a punishment tomorrow.
Yeah.
The punishment is 60 push-ups.
60 push-ups. Oh. In a time frame or as long as you want?
Okay, so maybe we'll do like 60. I think the male max, the reason why I picked that is because in the military, the max, I believe it's 60, like 65 or 67. In 2 minutes, you have to get to that number of push-ups in order to get 100% on your that
2 minutes. I thought it was just like do 60
without dropping your knees.
Yeah.
But you're gonna find out what my I love that I said it's my punishment.
You've owned it.
Yeah.
No, I'm
gonna find out what
you're gonna find out what Tyler's punishment's gonna be tomorrow on the video segment of this podcast. So go head over to our YouTube channel and check out that video because it's live now.
Amanda, where can everyone find you?
Yeah, so basically on everything, I'm just Miss Amanda. JUSTMISSAMANDA.
Like, subscribe, share with your grandmother, and leave a 5-star review. As we've said before, there's something wrong with the podcasting platforms, and they only allow 5-star reviews to happen. So even if you want to write a negative review, leave a 5-star and then just write whatever you want.
Yeah, you might get fined if you do anything but
I think Mr. Spotify reaches out when you try to do 4 or less, and so you don't want that. He's angry.
Thank you for joining the Spicy Bit of Meat podcast.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks.